Hello, I'm Mark Wallig, a retired librarian and a member of the Friends of the Library here in Greer. And I'm going to talk to you about one of my favorite authors, Clive Cussler. And I've enjoyed that writing very much because it fills my interest in adventure writing, historical fiction, and spy and the various thrillers that I have enjoyed over the years. Now, Clive Eric Cussler was born in Illinois on July 15th, 1931, and he is an American adventure novelist and underwater explorer. And he was somewhere in the middle of his career. He moved to Paradise Valley, Arizona, where he has quite a substantial mansion, and so we can consider him an Arizona author. He also spends his summers up in Colorado. He died in Scottsdale this year on February 24th, 2020, at the age of 88. Now, he wrote 78 novels, 2 children's books, and 5 non-fiction books, mostly about his underwater explorations and car collection. Over 20 of his most recent novels have made the top 10 of the New York Times fiction list. That's quite an accomplishment. He's also built an amazing empire of a series of novels with multiple novels in each series. And he publishes around 3 to 4 books a year with the help of co-writers who have advised him and then taken over much of the writing responsibility in each series. Now, when he was alive, Clive was very often seen over at the Poison Pen bookstore in Scottsdale, where he did autographs and gave book talks, and he also sometimes went down to Changing Hands in Tempe, which is now located in Chandler, very iconic book names. In addition to being a writer, Clive Cussler is also the founder of NUMA, the National Underwater and Marine Agency, which has explored, discovered, and salvaged over 60 historic shipwrecks, most notably the Confederate ironclad Manassas and the Confederate submarine Hunley, our first successful submarine to ever sink a ship. He also explored the Carpathia, which was a British ship that went to the rescue of the RMS Titanic. Now, his early writings began in 1965, and he had some successful novels titled The Mediterranean Caper, followed by Sea Hunters, and then Raised the Titanic. They all feature a marine engineer, government agent, and adventurer, Dirk Pitt. Now, Dirk Pitt is Clive Cussler's avatar. He's Clive Cussler himself, and many of the adventures that take place in his novels revolve around Cussler's actual undersea adventures. It's interesting that Cussler so loved his character, Dirk Pitt, that he named his son Dirk, and Dirk Cussler helps him write the Dirk Pitt novels. I hope I got all those Pitts correct and didn't mention Brad Pitt, who would make a good Dirk Pitt if there was ever another movie. Okay. All of his novels follow a blend of high adventure and high technology, and generally involve megalomaniac villains, lost ships, beautiful athletic women, and sunken treasure. Many of his characters have sidekicks, just like our old westerns back in the 50s. So Dirk Pitt has a character, pal by the name of Al Giordino, who supplies the gags. Or Kurt Austin has a partner named Joe Zavala. And Sam Fargo has his wife Remy. They're rich fortune hunters and share in many of the adventures. It's interesting that all of Dirk Pitt's series at one time have included characters from one series in the other series. So you very often to encounter Admiral Sandecker, who runs NUMA, and his assistant Rudy Gunn, or St. Julian Perlmutter, who was a naval historian. And it's also one of Clive Cussler's techniques that, like Alfred Hitchcock, he sometimes includes himself in the novel. Just briefly, a little cameo role. Maybe he's some old man with a burro out in the desert, or a guy sitting at the side of the road underneath the palm tree, or the fellow in the bar who helps the hero change a tire, maybe point out directions, make a correction to a map, maybe even have a secret map. And he says, oh, by the name, what is your name? Oh, Clive Cussler. And that's all he's mentioned in the book. His books follow a formula, so no matter what series you read, they almost always begin with a prologue that has a tie-in to something back in history. A sunken ship, a relic, a buried treasure, or some mysterious secret power that's lost over the ages, that was passed down from the Babylonians or the Egyptians. And then there's the villain who's out to capture that relic or idea or power for himself, to take over the world or to add something to his personal collection. I find it particularly helpful that at the beginning of each book, he lists a cast of characters so that you can keep track of who all these people are as you're reading. Imagine if you were reading War and Peace and you're trying to remember who all those characters were in those thousands of pages. And so Cussler takes care of that for you. And I've noticed that several authors, like David Baldacci, for example, has used that same technique in his novels to help you follow along. If you have an ebook, then that problem is sort of solved for you, because you can always search on the character's name or a certain word, and you can go back in the text and see where that is listed. But if you're reading a hard copy, that makes it a little challenging. Cussler wrote 5 different series, 26 featuring his hero, Dirk Pitt, Kurt Austin, and his adventures from the Numa Files. There are 17 of those. Sam and Remy Fargo are featured in 12 of their own adventures. And then Isaac Bell, who's a fictitious investigative agent back in the 1900s, is featured in 12. And then there's the Oregon Files, which is about a mysterious tramp steamer that's really a disguised secret spy ship with all kinds of weapons and equipment, who go around the world working for either Numa or the CIA as a private corporation. Well, the plots, they're kind of like a James Bond movie or an Indiana Jones or maybe a James West from those old TV movies, the Wild Wild West, where there's the cowboy hero or the underwater hero or the spy hero. And then there's usually a villain like Captain Nemo or some other villainous character who seeks to take over the world or steal something valuable. It almost always involves underwater exploration, scuba diving, maybe the use of some high-tech equipment that's kind of on the cutting edge of the future. There's a bit of reference to history, archaeology, geography, oceanography, cultures, and so there's a lot to learn from these books rather than just being entertained. And of course there's always the use of weapons, car chases, boat chases, underwater fights with spears, and all kinds of action. Almost every chapter ends in a cliffhanger. Now Cussler, as I said, has all of these books built around a singular format. And they really haven't changed since his first books until today. They're somewhat formulaic. They have humorous moments. They have explanation of technical gear as a techno thriller you would expect to do. The same characters, as I said, appear in many of the different books, even if they're in a different series or even in a different time. And So that makes it quite fascinating in itself. Now, no library would be without these books. We have them here in quite a number of quantity here at the Greer Memorial Library, and if there isn't a title that they have, you could probably get one from one of the other libraries that make up the Apache County system. I've read almost all of them. My favorites are more than likely the Dirk Pitt and the Fargo series, with the Oregon Files probably being my least because I'm not really into fantastic fiction. Now, Clive Cussler has a car collection, and if you can see here on the back of one of his novels, the Dirk Pitt series, it almost always features one of the cars from his collection used as the getaway car or some other feature in the novel. His collection consists of over 100 cars, all of them rare antiques, mostly from the early days of when automobiles had the coach in back and your chauffeur in the front. It's fun to see. It's located just north of Denver in Arvada, Colorado. I've been there, and I believe it's about $10 to view the collection, and you can spend a couple hours there and enjoy yourselves. Now, Cussler's books are ripe for television or full feature movies, and he dabbled for a bit at Hollywood. Two of his books were made into movies. The first was Raise the Titanic, and it featured, among other people, Richard Jordan and Jason Robards and Ann Archer. But the one you're probably more likely to be familiar with is Sahara, which starred Matthew McConaughey as Brad Pitt, Steve Zahn, William H. Macy as Admiral Sandexter, and Penelope Cruz as the heroine. It didn't do too well. It grossed $122 million, but it lost in expenses $244 million, so it was really quite a flop. Cussler wasn't very happy with how Titanic came out, and so he made sure that when they made Sahara that he had intellectual control over the script. But he got into conflict frequently with the producers and the directors, and even filed lawsuits to assure his rights. He lost. And he lost millions of dollars pursuing that. And he vowed at that time he would never make another movie from his books again. Now, I like Sahara. It was a really fun movie. I liked the casting, although Cussler did not. It has lots of action, a boat chase, helicopters sweeping over and spraying bullets. It earned 6 stars out of 10 on the Internet Movie Database, but I'd give it a 10. I really liked it a lot. Now, unfortunately, it's not in the Greer Library's video collection, but it is available free if you're a member of Amazon Prime. And it should be available on almost every streaming service. Well, what's the future now that Clive Cussler died? Well, his empire, his estate, is worth $120 million. I guess there's a little bit of money in writing a successful book series. And since every one of his books has a different co-writer, it's very possible that his books will continue under his name, written by these other authors. One of those authors is his own son, Dirk Cussler, who writes the Dirk Pitt series. Well, I hope you enjoyed my presentation. Thank you very much for watching.